Hey, welcome everyone. This is Kyler, and you are listening to another episode of the Grace Kid Podcast. And today I have a special guest, as always, with me, and so they're going to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Silas. I'm in 4th grade, and I'm 10.
And today, me and Silas are doing this after school, after work, late night recording. It's not that late, but are you tired? I'm feeling a little tired, yeah. So, before we get into our episode, we have a question of the day, as usual. So, Silas, do you remember what it is?
Yeah.
All right, ask the people.
If you could have a king, what would you want him or her to be like?
Yeah, if you were to pick out a king, what would you want them to be like? So, ask whoever you're with, and we'll be right back with our answers.
But you and God, I'll take this moment to give you everything, 'cause Jesus, nothing compares to living life with you, life with you.
And we are back. We're just over here singing. So, Silas, if you were to pick out a king, what would you want them to be like?
I'd want them to be strong, courageous, smart enough to make good decisions, and a good leader.
A good leader. Yeah, that would be a good thing, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was telling Silas before, I was like, I would hope a king would be able to make good decisions, right? Like smart enough to make good decisions.
Yeah.
I agreed with Silas. I also said maybe like humble, not like a proud leader, but one that's humble and cares about people and has compassion. But I agreed a lot with what Silas said. Yeah, I want a courageous leader, one that makes good choices, and that's what I would want in a king. And so that was a big clue to what we're talking about today, because last week we talked about the nation of Israel in the Bible in 1 Samuel and how they wanted a king. And what we learned about was that they had been following God, like the nation of Israel. We learned this like a while back, but they followed God a lot. Like when Moses led them out of Egypt into all the way to the promised land, they followed God by a pillar of cloud and fire.
Fire by night.
Yeah. And they were following God. Yeah. And so God was their king. And we know that even with Jesus, we call Jesus our king. And so they were acting like he was a king. He was their king. But then they saw the nations around them, and they were like, you know what? We want a king. We want a king for ourselves. We want to be like everyone else. And so it happens. Israel gets a king. Yeah. And so we learned about Samuel last week and kind of about who he is. And so Samuel, he goes and he finds the king, who this king was going to be. And this guy his name was Saul. Okay? Saul. And so he goes and finds him. Huh?
King Saul.
King Saul, yeah. He becomes king. And so he goes and finds Saul. And people loved him for his looks. Okay, for his looks. He looked good on the outside. It even describes him as being like shoulders taller than everyone, which is just like, it'd be like a tall person. Like he stands out. You can, have you ever seen a really tall person walk in a room?
Yes.
Yeah, I have too. And you're like, wow, that guy is tall. And so, but that's what Israel wanted in a leader, and that is what they got. And so Saul didn't have very good character though. So Samuel went looking for Saul to announce him as Israel's new king, and they couldn't find him. And so God actually tells them where he is. Where was he hiding?
In baggage.
In baggage, yeah. And so God literally says he's hiding in the baggage. So they found him, they brought him out, and he stood taller than everyone else. And so Samuel said to the people, "This is the man the Lord has chosen as your king. No one in Israel is like him." And all the people shouted, "Long live
the king."
Yeah. And so me and Silas were talking. This does not sound like a king that we would want. Like someone who is hiding. We wanted our king to be courageous.
And strong.
A
good leader.
Yeah. And he's hiding in baggage before he's about to be announced as the king. That is not the kind of king that we were wanting.
No.
And so yeah, it goes on, and the nation of Israel is getting what they wanted. They wanted a king who looked good and powerful instead of someone who was a perfect leader, which is what they had following God. And Saul was selfish and cared more about what people thought than doing the right thing. And so a little bit later after this, Samuel tells Saul if he has any issues to do a specific thing. So Silas, what did he tell him?
Samuel told Saul if he's in the midst of his trouble, go to Gilgal and wait 7 days, and I will come to make an offering for you.
Yeah, he goes, yeah, exactly. Go to Gilgal, wait 7 days, I will come, and I will talk to God for you. I'll make the sacrifice. I'll do the offering. And so some time passes, and Saul faces a major issue. A huge army is formed, and Saul's army was scared, like really scared, trembling with fear. And some of them even started to run away. So Saul started to do what Samuel said. So what does he do?
Saul heads to Gilgal, and he waits 7 days, and yeah.
Yeah. So he does exactly what he says. He goes to Gilgal, waits 7 days, but who doesn't show up?
Samuel does not show up, and the sun is going down on the 7th day.
And Saul's kind of freaking out a little bit.
And so Saul decides, and he starts making the offering, and then right as he's finishing up, who comes?
Samuel. Samuel comes. Yeah, and he walks up, he sees what Saul has done, and he's like, "What have you done? What have you done? You made this thing. You did not listen entirely to what we said." And so, Silas, have you ever gotten in trouble before?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Plenty
I
of
have
times.
too. And so, I'm sure we've both learned there's a good way to do things when we get in trouble and a bad way to do things when we get in trouble. And so, what would be like a bad way to do something? Like, say, Silas, you did something bad and you're getting in trouble for it. What should you not do?
I should not lie.
Yeah, you don't want to lie. And you also don't want to blame it on others, right? And there's a good way to do it too, right? If we get in trouble, one, we need to listen. And then we need to be accountable for what we've done. Like we don't lie and we listen.
Yeah.
And probably apologize too. And Saul, though, he does not do this. Samuel is upset with him. He's like, "What have you done? What have you done?" And Saul starts to blame everyone else. He's like, "Well, I came here just like you said. I waited 7 days just like you said, and you didn't show up." But Samuel did show up. It just wasn't on Saul's timing. And he's like, "So then, because you didn't show up in time, I had to make the sacrifice." And Samuel calls him a fool. He goes, "How foolish." Samuel's like not pleased with Saul at all. And he goes, "You have not kept the command the Lord your God gave you. And had you kept it, if you did, the Lord would have established your kingdom over Israel forever. You would have been king for a long time. But now your kingdom must end, for the Lord has sought out a man after his own heart. And the Lord has already appointed him to be the leader of his people because you have not kept the Lord's commands." And so Saul doesn't listen, and he is not a great king. And so it makes me think, Silas, how do we apply this story to our lives? What do we learn about it?
We learn that you shouldn't, if somebody tells you that they'll do something for you and they don't show up when you want them to, just keep on waiting for them.
Yeah, maybe like your parents have told you to do something and they say, "Hey, do all these things, but don't do the final step. Don't do the final step. I'll come and help you with it." You should listen to that, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, you should listen. It also makes me think about that God cares more about what's on the inside than how we look on the outside.
Yeah.
Like, God cares more about who we are. Silas, we talked about this before we recorded, but we were talking about, what does character mean? Like, when you think about when someone says, "Oh, you have good character," what is character?
Character would be like something you prefer and your personalities.
Yeah, it's not like a cartoon character or anything like that, but character is like who we are inside. Like, what is your character? Are you responsible?
Yeah.
Are you trustworthy? Like, how is your character?
Most of the time.
How is who you are? Yeah, and so essentially it was like God cares more about that than how we look or how we present ourselves. God cares more about our heart than how we look. And so yeah, and it also makes me think like, will you wait on God and follow him? God promises that he's going to lead you anywhere you go. And like Ruth did, she followed God. Samuel did, he followed God. Will we follow God? And so me and Silas were talking, and we have a challenge for you. And so our challenge is that we want you, whoever's in your family, whoever you live with, is that pick someone to be a king for 1 hour.
Or have everybody in your family do it.
Yeah.
Be king or queen for 1 hour.
Yeah. And then they get to like make the rules and do that sort of thing. And then at the end, you guys vote to see who was the best king. And then, so that's our challenge. But also our challenge is also to reflect and say, am I following God? Am I doing what he says? And God gives us two ways to follow him. Like one is making him the Lord or king of your life and to follow him. And you can do that through the ABCs. Silas, do you know the ABCs?
Admit, believe, and confess.
Yeah, admit, believe, confess. Sometimes we say choose. And so you can do that. And that's another way that we challenge you is think, do I follow God? Is he the king of my life? And if not, accept him. Accept, believe, and choose him. And so that wraps up the end of our podcast. We hope you enjoyed, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.
And God, I'll take this moment to give you everything. 'Cause Jesus, nothing compares to living life with you. Life with you.
If you would like more resources regarding the One Story Plan, go to visitgracechurch.com/onestory. And if you'd like more resources for your kids, you can go to visitgracechurch.com/kids. We also have a YouTube channel, and you can find it by searching Visit Grace Kids on YouTube. If you like this podcast, we would love for you to like, subscribe, share, and leave us a comment. We'll see you soon.